Good evening mga ka-YouTubers po natin. Welcome again to another live episode of our live streaming tax training. Our topic for today is about how to prepare for transfer pricing audit. No, nakakapanahon because the BIR is very strict along this way, no? Okay. So yun po yung topic natin ngayon, and before that I would like to say thank you sa ating mga subscribers. No, to those na hindi pa nag-subscribe, please subscribe to our channel. And umabot na tayo na ngayon ng 4,000
660
Dio 5 4,480, no? Parang 4,000
46 na rin.
4,680, no? Okay, so thank you very much for your support. No? So our topic for today is about how to prepare for a transfer pricing audit. No? Kasi meron na tayong guidelines on transfer pricing, which is the Revenue Audit Memorandum Order 1-2019. But aside from that, meron pa sila yung bago about the related party transactions. Ano yung mga related party transactions na sinasabi natin? Ito yung under the PAS 24, the Philippine Accounting Standards 24, na dinidefine doon kung sino yung mga related parties. At this require din doon yung kung ano yung mga disclosure requirements. So parang in-uphold lang din siya ng BAR na pagka may related party transactions, dapat meron tayong mga disclosures, no, as required by the accounting standards. Okay. So, shout out. Sino yung mga nandyan?
Wala pa po.
Ha? Wala pang nakikita?
Wala pang nagpapabate.
Okay. Sige. So, shout out tayo sa mga YouTubers natin, no? Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, yung mga taga Mindanao natin. Maayong gabi kaninyong tanan sa atin din mga kababayan na Ilonggo, maayong gabi sa inyong tanan, and also sa ating mga kababayan sa lahat na, no, magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. And welcome again to another live episode. So itong ating tax training, yung aim po ng tax training natin is for you to have a better tax compliance. Why? Kasi minsan hihirapan tayong mag-comply sa ating mga tax obligations because kung minsan kulang yung kaalaman natin o kulang tayo sa mga proseso, no, kung ano yung ating dapat gawin. That's why our topic for today is about how to prepare for transfer pricing audit. Ano po ba itong tinatawag na transfer pricing audit? Ang transfer pricing audit po, ito yung audit na gagawin sa inyo ng BIR pag mayroon kayong mga related party transactions. Kasi pag ang transactions, no, between related parties, mas hinihigpitan yan kasi ang tawag dyan related parties, hindi yan independent transactions. So pag sinabi natin na transfer pricing audit, ito yung titingnan yung compliance ninyo that the pricing between related parties are arm's length. Ano po itong arm's length? Ito yung principles adopted by the international communities na kailangan ang mga transactions between related parties should be at par or similar doon sa independent party transactions, no? So bakit ang gauge natin or ang base natin is the independent party transactions? Because the independent party transactions is the true transactions, no? Siya yung totoong transactions. Why? Because there is no element of control. Pag sinabi kasi natin na related party transactions and there is an element of control between the related parties, sino yung nagko-control? Ang investor over the investee. Why? Kasi meron siyang rights in order to protect his investment, no? O kaya yung parent over its subsidiary. Bakit ang parent nagko-control over the subsidiary? Kasi siya yung author, siya yung may pakana, siya yung gumawa ng subsidiary in order to fit its purpose, no? So yun yung tinatawag natin na mayroong related party transactions. Okay, so actually I'm crafting yung sinasabi natin na how to prepare for a transfer pricing audit. Kasi yung RAMO, yun yung procedure po na gagawin ng examiner kung magkaroon na kayo ng audit, no? So, bakit ginawa po itong guidelines na RAMO 1-2019? Because ang application po nito are for the related party or controlled transactions. Why? Because yung mga intra-group services, interest payments, capitalization, among others, between related party transactions are at least accessible. Ano ibig sabihin ng accessible? Yung magkaroon ng findings at kung mayroong mga discrepancy between the pricing, hindi arm's length, then pwede siyang singilin ng gobyerno natin and then pay deficiency taxes. Okay. The guidelines, which is RAMO 1-2019, is applicable by analogy to in relation to transactions between permanent establishment. Ano po ba itong permanent establishment? Ito po yung nasa article ng OECD Model Tax Convention, and that permanent establishment refers to the branch, no? Pwede siya maging branch, mine site, or presence niya as branch in other countries, no? So, ito yung sa mga multinational corporations. No? Its head office or other related branches for the purpose of the guidelines. The PE will be treated as a separate and distinct enterprise from its head office or other related branches, subsidiaries for tax purposes. Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? The permanent establishment is a separate entity. So, ibig sabihin lang, kahit na may parent, no? And then merong permanent establishment. Iba yung permanent establishment, iba ang treatment doon. Iba din ang treatment sa parent company. Why? Because yung presence ng permanent establishment sa isang bansa, it creates a taxable entity, no? So, pag sinabi natin na it creates a taxable entity, basta mapatunayan na mayroong permanent establishment, the stay halimbawa is more than 183 days, din ang ibig sabihin nun, may permanent establishment sa isang bansa, dapat na magbayad na siya ng tax, no? As if doing business na siya in that country. The reporting requirements, no, dito sa RAMO 1-2019, dinidefine dito yung mga reports at saka yung mga documents na kailangan po ng examiner during the transfer pricing audit. Wala pa rin? Wala pa?
Shoutout ma'am, si Ma'am Mary Grace Randrap at si Sir Josefino Reliet.
As always, no, shout out kay Sir Josefino at saka kayo Mary Grace, no? Diyan pa rin kayo. Thank you very much, no? Tuloy na yung ating online streaming. Nagpalit kasi kami ng TV last time. Naghahang, no? Hindi kakayanin ng ibang spec na TV. Okay. Kailangan talaga yung gadgets mo pala pag mga ganitong klase nag-a-upgrade ka. Tsaka kailangan mo talaga yung high spec, no? So, the effectivity of this revenue memorandum order is since 2019 ito, then this will apply in 2019, no? Okay. So, bakit po nagkaroon tayo ng mga tinatawag natin na transfer pricing audit? Transfer pricing is economic taxation, no? And because of globalization, kailan ba nag-umpisa ang globalization? Mga 1960s pa, no? Wherein ino-open na lahat ng mga bansa yung kanilang trade, no? Na pwede nang pumasok, pwede nang makipag-business sa ibang mga bansa. Open na sila, hindi yung mga may restrictions, hindi pwede. So, nagkaroon ng tinatawag natin na globalization, no? So, anong nangyari? The multinational corporations expand their businesses activities globally, so that they already have their global economic presence, no? Maramdaman na. And the fast-pacing progress in technology communication and transportation. Ito yung mabilis na ang transportation, no? Ang dami ng mga airline companies. Yung communication improve na. So, that makes it accessible, no? Kahit na sabihin pa natin hindi multinationals, accessible na yung paggawa ng negosyo kahit sa ibang bansa ka. Okay. So, bakit itong ating mga multinational corporations pumupunta pa sa iba't ibang bansa? To look for cheaper materials, no? Kasi there is already a problem on high production cost. And then, saturation ng domestic markets, no? Kaya naghahanap sila ng mga countries where they can have advantages in production cost, no? At saka magkaroon ng location savings and also market share, no? Market premium. O kung mapapansin natin, sa Africa ngayon, halos ang mga global powers natin, yung mga may pera talaga na multinationals, nandun sila nag-i-invest sa Africa. Why? Kasi ang Africa has a vast resources, no? Yung India, malaki din ang India, pero halos saturated na. Yung China, ganun din. Pero yung Africa, hindi pa masyadong exploited. That's why maraming mga multinationals ang doon nag-i-invest. No? Rapid growth of multinational corporation entails an increase of related party transactions globally. No? Kasi yung presence ng multinational corporation, nagtitrigger yan na i-establish yan ng mga subsidiaries all over the world para magamit niya as tutulong sa kanyang operations, no? Kasi the business is global. So dapat global din po yung mga tutulong sa isang nagninegosyo. Pakipatay na itong aircon. Okay, so spatial relation may evoke the possibility that income or profit may be reported smaller than the actual one or cost expenses may be claimed excessively. Anyway, yun po yung mga findings natin sa mga transfer pricing cases. Just like America, 1960, 1950s, meron na silang mga transfer pricing cases, no? Hindi kagaya sa atin na halos ngayon lang tayo na tutok sa transfer pricing. But America, 1950s pa, 1920s, no? Iba pa lang yung term, cherry picking pa lang noon, no? Pero meron na silang tinatawag natin ngayon na transfer pricing. Oh, so 1920, 2020, tayo ngayon, 100 years ago. 100 years ago, mayroon ng transfer pricing. No? Kaso lang tayo natutulog pa sa pansitan. Ngayon lang tayo nag-accept ng application ng transfer pricing sa atin. Pero sa Amerika, ginagamit na po nila yan sa pag-audit ng kanilang mga taxpayers, 1920s pa. No? And then, naging rampant lang siya noong nag-globalization niya noong mga 1960s. No? Okay. Anong posibleng mangyari because of this globalization? No? The possibility that income or profit may be reported smaller than the actual one or cost expenses may be claimed excessively. May mga cases na nakarating sa Supreme Court, may mga cases na found out na meron silang tinatawag na double claim, no? Double claim ng expenses. Especially yung pinaka-most abused dati. Ngayon, hindi na masyado yung management fee, no? So, papyaw, bibigyan ko kayo kung paano yung documentation ninyo sa management fees na dapat arm's length, no? The related transactions include sale, purchase, transfer, utilization of tangible and intangible assets, provision of intra-group services, interest payments, and capitalization, among others. Actually po, yung mga related party transactions, unlimited yan eh. Depende yan sa kung ano yung ginagawa ng mga parties involved. No? Pero ang dami niyan, ang daming pwedeng gawin. Okay. The reasons that drive the group of companies in setting up transfer prices for related party transactions include minimizing tax. No? Kasi Hindi ka kasi magko-control, hindi ka magkaroon ng related parties kung wala kang benefits, no? Kaya yan ginawa yung mga related parties in order to have benefits, in order to have competitive advantages, no? So, anong reason daw bakit tayo nagkaroon ng set up yung mga multinationals, no? Yung iba-ibang klase ng transfer price. Minimizing tax, no? Kasi isa talaga sa pinakamalaki na expense ng mga companies yung tinatawag natin na taxes, no? Malaki talaga yung binabayad na tax. Repatriation of capital, ito yung ilabas mo sa bansa mo yung capital, dalhin mo sa ibang bansa, no? Sa totoong buhay, may mga batas na taxable yan. Pagka yung nirepatriate mo yung capital mo, dinala mo sa ibang bansa. The moment na inilabas mo yung capital mo sa bansa, dapat magbayad ka. O, may bayad. Exchange rate, different risk, and window dressing of the parent company's financial statements. So, yun na yung masaklap. Kaya nga, yun ang fraud, no? Fraudulent yan. That's why meron tayong lecture on fraud siguro next week, no? At hingi pa sila na to install mechanism on how to deter fraud, no? Para maiwasan yung fraud. Okay. Yun ang tinatawag na window dressing of the parent company, no? Window dressing, no, ibig sabihin nun, pinapakita lang na maganda, maayos, gaining yung company, pero yung totoo hindi. No? Okay. So, transfer price and related party transaction must conform with, sabi ko sa inyo, arm's length principle. No? Saan yan namamandate? Under our revenue regulations number 2-2013. Ito yung kauna-unang transfer pricing guidelines po na ginawa dito sa Pilipinas. No? RR number 2-2013. The principles stipulates that if the conditions in the transactions between related parties are the same or similar to the conditions in transaction between the independent parties that are used as comparables, no? So, dapat same sila or similar. Okay. The price or profit in the related transactions must be the same as or similar to the range of prices or profit in the transactions between the comparable independent parties. Bakit? Ano ba ang kino-compare natin? Kasi diba sabi natin, the arm's length principle requires that the financial and commercial transactions of related parties should be comparable with the unrelated parties or the independent parties. No? Okay, so the price or profit ng related party, ito yung price or profit, ito yung kino-compare, no? Kasi di ba sabi natin, must be equal or similar. So, anong gagawin natin to make it equal or similar? Magko-compare tayo, no? The Commissioner of Internal Revenue, ito yung transfer pricing law po in the Philippines kasi yung RR 2-2013 is guideline, no? Implementing guidelines lang. So, ang transfer pricing law po talaga na natin na nasa batas natin, National Internal Revenue Code, is the Section 50 of the National Internal Revenue Code. No? Ito yung RR 2-2013, ito yung kanyang implementing guidelines. Excuse me. Asa na yung tubig ko dito? Pahingi. Oo, yung inumin yung ganyan. Okay. So, intra-firm transactions between related parties to determine appropriate revenue and taxable income by using the comparable and controlled price method. Kasi para masabi natin na comparable ang isang company with of independent parties, we have to compare, no? At ano yung mga method natin na gagamitin natin pag tayo ay nag-compare. No? So, ito yung comparable and controlled price method. Ibig sabihin, ang i-compare natin is the price, no? And then we have the resale price method. Ano ibig sabihin ng resale price method? Thank you. Excuse lang po. Okay. So, we have, under the OECD transfer pricing guidelines, we have at least 5 methods po ang pinoprovide niya na ito yung gamitin natin na methods at ano yung ating i-compare bawat method. So, sa comparable and controlled price method, we compare the price. No? Sa resale price method, we compare the margin or the gross profit margin. Sa cost plus method naman, we also compare the gross profit margin. In the transactional net margin method, we compare the net margin or the net income. Ang pinaka last na method is the profit split method. Ito yung if the operation between related parties such that it is very highly integrated, then we have to split the profit. We have to split the profit depending on the variables that we choose, which is applicable on the circumstances. So, audit of transfer pricing on related transaction is a test application of the arm's length principle to the related transactions. Hence, this audit guidelines. No? Lahat, pagka may sinasabi tayo na transfer pricing audit, ang bottom line talaga niyan, arm's length principle. No? Kahit tingnan pa natin yung mga guidelines na gawa mismo ng OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, makikita mo talaga na the arm's length principle is really the accepted one at saka yun talaga ang dapat na i-apply. No? Okay. Okay, so ano po yung audit procedure natin sa transfer pricing? No? Pag sinabi nating audit, series of activities yan. Ibig sabihin, marami tayong gagawin dyan. Mag-umpisa pa sa step 1 hanggang sa matapos natin yung audit and then makapag-render po tayo ng report. No? So, ganun ang ginagawa din ng BAR. Okay, so what is the audit procedure on transfer pricing? Why is it important that we should know kung ano yung audit procedure? Para hindi tayo mahirapan mag-comply. No? Ang procedure na gagawin ng examiner, at least alam natin na ito yung gagamitin niya, alam natin i-comply. No? Kasi ang examiner hindi naman yan gagawa ng mga sarili niyang reports, ipapasa yan sa accountant ang gagawa. No? So, audit is a series of activities of collecting and processing data. Information and or proof objectively and professionally based on an audit standard to test compliance in fulfillment of tax obligation and or for the purposes in the context of implementing the provision of the existing tax laws and regulations. So yun po talaga ang purpose ng audit. No, yung purpose ng audit hindi lang titingnan yung mga dokumento mo na nandyan, but titingnan kung lahat ng mga regulations na dapat sundin mo ay talagang nasunod. No? Kaya yung tawag natin dyan, compliance audit. Okay. So, transfer pricing audit is conducted to test the compliance in fulfillment of tax obligation of the taxpayer with related party transactions. Audit procedure on transfer pricing consists of preparation, implementation, and reporting. So, yun yung steps, no? So, saan tayo mag-umpisa sa transfer pricing audit? Preparation. And then the implementation, and then the reporting. No? So, in the preparation of audit, the revenue officer or the examiner should collect and learn taxpayers' data in respect of special relations with their related associated parties. Okay. Since ang topic po natin is how to prepare for an audit, transfer pricing audit. So, ang ibig po sabihin, tayo yung ino-audit, tayo yung mag-prepare ng documents. No? Kasi nasa atin yung dokumento. No? Okay. Implementation of audit on transfer pricing comprise of the following. No? Number 1, determination of the characteristic of the taxpayer's business. No? Ano ba yung business na yung nature niya, kung ano yung purpose niya, no? Kung ano yung activity niya. No? And then the selection of the transfer pricing method and the application of the arm's length principle. Okay. Reporting of audit on transfer pricing is carried out in accordance with the audit procedure. Okay. So how do we prepare for a transfer pricing audit? No? Okay. So proper selection of issues and application of transfer pricing methods for transfer pricing examination should have the broadest impact on achieving compliance regardless of the size or type of entity. No? Yeah. Okay. So audit plan will be issue focused and contain the following, no, issues identified. Bakit importante yung mga issues identified? Because ito yung tinatawag natin na transfer pricing issues, and if we want to complete our audit, we have to answer all these issues. No? The audit steps, the timelines, and the communication agreements. Okay. So, anong gagawin po ng examiner or the revenue officer? Coordinate with the taxpayer to establish a plan to complete the transfer pricing audit in a timely manner. In a timely manner because the examiners is just given the time, no, to finish their audit. No? So, kaya hindi pwedeng patagalin. Audit can be productive if the revenue officer and the taxpayer work together in a spirit of cooperation, responsiveness, and transparency. No? The audit plan may be adjusted throughout the process. Okay, so sabi lang yan, the audit can be productive kung yung taxpayer daw, tsaka yung examiner work together. No? Pero sa totoong buhay, sobrang hirap yan. Okay, so what are the steps in the audit preparation? So, number 1, review the available information relating to the taxpayer's related party transaction and its related parties such as annual income tax return, attachment, no? Tax treaty relief application, rulings and prior years, audit reports if any, and then further research may be done about the taxpayer's background, history, core business operations through websites, commercial databases, or a spatial relationship with the transaction counterparty. So, step 1 pa lang po yun. Step 2, set a schedule for initial meetings with the taxpayers covering the general background of the taxpayer's business operation. Key functions, product service flow, worldwide structure, transfer pricing policy, transfer pricing documentation, and other relevant information. No? Wala pang question?
Wala pa. Nakikinig sila sa basta transfer pricing.
Walang question.
Walang question.
Walang question, sige.
Eto ma'am, may ano ma'am, si Sir Jonathan Nolasco ma'am.
Okay. Shout out po, Sir Jonathan.
Ang sabi niya ma'am, 8% po inavail namin ng mag-register.
Option rate, opo.
Ano daw po ang mga need namin i-submit sa BIR by January? Need po ba mag-submit ng financial statement at inventory?
Yes, yes po, tama. So, if you opted for the 8% na option rate, yan yung babayaran ninyo quarterly based on your sales, no? Or net income, no? Uh, hindi na kayo magbabayad ng percentage tax, no? Okay. So, anong isasubmit natin pagdating ng January? Yung list of inventory, ang deadline po niyan is January 31. No? And then, meron pa tayong mga report na isasubmit din yung mga annual alpha list kung meron tayong mga withholding. No? Sa expanded, sa mga rental halimbawa, o kaya sa purchases natin, no? Na mga halimbawa, janitorial security agencies. Pwede rin tayo mag-withhold doon, no? So, gagawa tayo ng alpha list niyan to be submitted on January. Sa January po yan, sinasubmit. Okay?
Yun pa lang mamang question.
Sige. Break lang po tayo ng 5 minutes, ha? CCR lang. Okay. So, continue po tayo sa transfer pricing audit, no? So, nasa step 2 na tayo. No? Set a schedule for initial meeting with the taxpayer covering the general background of the taxpayer's business operation. So, yun ang pinakauna. No? Ano yun? General background muna ng business operations ng taxpayer. No? The key functions, the product or service flow, the worldwide structure, the transfer pricing policy, transfer pricing documentation, and other relevant information. Also directly coming from the taxpayer yan. No? The revenue officers also may request for information or evidence of related party transaction together with other attachment. Ito na yung in-answer po nitong lately, yung RR 19-2020 natin. Ito yung form na 1709. No? Nandoon na kung ano yung mga disclosures mo na ilalagay mo doon sa related party transactions. So, mas nauna itong Ramo 1-2019 kaysa doon sa RR 19-2020 at saka yung Revenue Memorandum Circular 75-2020. No? So, mas nauna itong pinag-uusapan natin na Revenue Audit Memorandum Order. No? And then the third step is to evaluate the information and the documents submitted. Pag meron na submit na mga documents, the examiner will evaluate, no? At actually ako may ginawa na ako na mga transfer pricing issues eh. Kasi bakit may evaluate? Titingnan mo na yung mga possible na transfer pricing issues that will crop up, no? Kasi doon pa lang sa dokumento na isa-submit sa iyo, makikita mo na kung ano yung mga possible na issues ng transfer pricing, no? Example lang, ito lang yung ginawa ko. Kasi there was a time na ako yung nag-audit, nag-review lahat ng docket ng large taxpayer, no? Kasi nahanap yung mga transfer pricing issues na pwede. So ako yung nag-evaluate. Ano yung isang nakita ko? Actually, ang dami kong mga findings, eh, no? But I'll just give you one example. Ito yung, tinignan ko yung nature ng business ng taxpayer. The nature is manufacturing, no? And since manufacturing siya, saan mo yan makikita? Doon sa notes to financial statement yan na note number 1. Doon nakalagay yan. Yung nature ng kanyang business. And then, siyempre, titingnan mo lahat. Since manufacturing siya, titingnan mo ngayon kung ano yung sales, titingnan mo yung balance sheet, income statement. No? But it is unique kung tiningnan ko yung kanyang income statement, dun sa cost of goods manufactured and sold niya, dapat walang raw materials. No? Sabi ko, paano ka naging manufacturing company kung wala kang raw materials? Ano may na-manufacture mo? Direct labor lang at saka factory overhead. Sabi ko, anong magagawa mong produkto pag ganyan? Sabi niya, the raw materials, hindi nila kiniklaim because it is owned by the parent company. And then yung product, kinukuha din ng parent company. So ang kanila lang daw talaga is the direct labor and factory overhead. Then sabi ko, you are not a manufacturing company. Kasi kung manufacturing company ka, sa nature pa lang talaga ng business mo, yung cost mo, 3, no? Raw materials, direct labor, and factory overhead. Wala ka raw materials, so hindi ka na manufacturing company. No? Anong trabaho mo? Service ka lang. Kanino ka nagsiservice? Sa parent company mo. No? So that's the potential issue. Pero along the way, ang dami ko pang nakitang mga issues during my evaluation. Number 4, set for a transfer pricing orientation meeting with the taxpayer to discuss the initial findings included but not limited to letter A, taxpayer's background and history of intercompany transactions. So ito, discuss mo na naman to sa taxpayer. No? Discuss also all intercompany transactions in the years under examination. And usually naman in the Philippines, ilang years yung ating under investigation? Usually 1 year. 1 taxable year. Yung coverage kasi ng mga letters authority natin to investigate is 1 year. And yung investigation po ng transfer pricing audit, hindi naman to na mag-i-issue ng isang letter of authority para lang sa transfer pricing. No. Kasama po ito because transfer pricing is income tax, no? The related party transactions, the arm's length principle will affect only the income tax pag may findings. It will not affect the value added tax or other business taxes. Gain understanding of the taxpayer's rationale for entering into the transactions. If ever may mga transactions na nangyayari between related parties and taxpayer, no? So, i-gain mo daw kung ano yung reason kung bakit ka pumasok. Especially kung parang nakikita mo, tagilid tong klase na transaction, bakit siya pumasok dito? No? Gain understanding of the taxpayer's value chain associated with the intangible services and or tangible goods. No? So, understanding the taxpayer's value chain. Gain understanding whether the intercompany transaction is associated with the transfer of an income stream or contribution to the value of any intangible. Ito ang pinakamaraming mga issues talaga na nakakarating sa iba't ibang korte all over the world, no? About intangibles. Evaluation of intangibles, yung mga participation, yung cost sharing sa pagdating na sa intangibles. Letter C discuss also the functions performed, assets employed, risks assumed by its controlled party of the respective intercompany transactions. So, pasok na dito yung comparability analysis ng OECD. Diba, there are 5 comparability analysis na sinasabi ang OECD na ito talaga, yung factors na to, kailangan i-apply nyo ito in every transfer pricing study. So, ano-ano po yung mga yun? The 5 comparability factors. Number 1, yung nature of goods and services, no? Whether tangible or intangible. Number 2, ito yung functions, assets, and risk. O ito yung tinatawag na FAR analysis. And then the economic condition, yun yung number 3. And then the contractual terms, and then the business strategies. So, yung 5 na yan, kailangan i-apply mo yan pag nag-compare ka, no? Using those factors. Okay. Understand how the preparer of the transfer pricing study gained knowledge of its controlled party functions performed, assets employed, risks assumed, and request supporting documents, interview, notes, and minutes. So, ano sinasabi po dito? The controlled parties functions performed, no? Yung transfer pricing study. Ano tong transfer pricing study? Ito yung transfer pricing analysis report, no? Na ginagawa, pinapagawa sa isang may related party transactions na nandoon na yung mga comparables na justify niya kung bakit iyan yung pricing niya, no? Okay. Discuss whether to request background documentation, no? As part of our services, we also offer po that kind of services to our clients, yung transfer pricing analysis. So, discuss whether to request background documentation. Ano yung mga background documentation? Ito yung mga documentations about the financial and commercial transactions or about the company itself. Identify persons responsible for structuring the transaction from the tax planning perspective, no? Kaya maraming examiner po ng BIR ang umaayaw dito kasi mas toxic yung pag-conduct ng transfer pricing audit, no? As ang dami mong titingnan. No? And then discuss the need to request additional documentation, including contracts and agreements not previously requested. Based on my experience kasi as an examiner, ang hirap pag hindi cooperative yung taxpayer at kulang-kulang yung mga ibibigay sa iyo na documents, no? Kaya hindi mo ma-complete yung audit. Okay. Gain an understanding of the transfer pricing methods selected by the taxpayer for significant transactions. Ano yung mga significant transactions ng taxpayer? Siyempre, ito yung mga, kumbaga sa product, ito yung malaki yung contribution sa kanya, yung malaki ang sales, no? Yung contracts, yung signing ng mga contracts. No? Discuss the process for requesting follow-up meeting and clarifications, no? So ito talagang matrabaho yung transfer pricing audit. Sobra, no? Dito sa Pilipinas hindi pa masyado, but in other countries just like yung sa India, no? Mabilis na sila. Yung isang naging kasabayan ko sa study, transfer pricing officer po siya in India. At ang sabi niya, he used to conclude 18 cases a day ng transfer pricing. No? So, mabilis po sila. Kasi ano yung pinag-aawayan nila? Yun ang gross profit rate, depending kung anong profit level indicator yung pag-uusapan ninyo. Kaya dapat yung mga nature of business, alam na yan, automatic na yun. Hindi na yan. Wala pinag-uusapan, wala nang dispute about that. No? If needed, require the taxpayer's explanation through a supplemental letter request for information on related party transactions for classification purposes, no? So, taxpayer na naman mag-i-explain, no? Through supplemental letter request, no? Kaya hindi to natatapos ang transfer pricing audit in one setting, no? Tagal. Revenue officer shall analyze the risk of arm's length price in the related party transactions based on the result of the prior meeting as set forth in the annexes. No, maraming annexes po itong Ramo 1-2019, no? Ang dami niyang annexes. Factors that need to be examined include the following. Okay. Worldwide effective tax rate and whether the taxpayer's overall tax position is such that income shifting would be beneficial from a financial accounting cash flow standpoint. Paano ito nangyayari? You have to know kung ano yung mga related parties na member po itong taxpayer na under audit, no? So kung malaman mo na kung nasaan yung kanyang mga ka-grupo, no, ka-related parties, know also kung magkano ang tax rates in every country wherein may presence doon yung members of the group, no? Kasi malalaman mo na kaagad na bakit doon sinishift yung income? Kasi mura lang yung tax, no? Yung mga sinasabi natin na mga tax haven countries, 5% lang ang income, no? 6%. O kaya yung iba wala pa. No? Kaya doon nila dinadala yung mga income nila. Potential applicability of a tax treaty. Ano yung applicability of the tax treaty? The Philippines right now has 43 tax treaties with other countries. So 43 yan. Anong nangyayari dyan sa tax treaty? Tax treaty is a double tax agreement, no, for the avoidance of double taxation. Yung tax treaty na yan, may mga preferential rate yan na ino-offer between the country, no? So halimbawa, the Philippines has a tax treaty with Singapore. So nag-conclude sila na the income tax for the citizen of both Philippines and Singapore is 5%. So be it, 5% yung pareho na. Pagka yung may Filipino citizen na nagtrabaho sa Singapore, ang impose niya doon 5% lang. Pagka naman ang Singaporean nagtrabaho sa Pilipinas, impose naman ng Pilipinas 5% lang. Kasi yun ang nasa tax treaty, no? So you have to respect, as a country, you have to respect your tax treaty. Source of income and tax credit availability. Ano yung source of income? Sales, or sometimes ang nangyayari dito hindi sales, reimbursement of expenses lang ng parent, no? Why? Kasi ang subsidiary dito sa Pilipinas just doing service to the parent. No? Okay, so materiality of related party transactions, which may be measured from their proportion to sales or to net operating profit. Ito na yung mga profit level indicator natin at saka mga ratios that will help us analyze kung ano yung status ng tested party natin or yung company under transfer pricing audit. No? So, taxpayer transactions with related parties domiciled located in countries or economic zones with low or zero tax rates. Ano yung mga zero tax rates na to? Ito yung mawala talagang taxes, no? Ano naman itong mga tinatawag natin na economic zones? The Philippines has more than 200 economic zones. Ano treatment natin sa economic zones? Economic zones are separate customs territory. Wala pong customs dyan. No? Pagkat pumasok dyan ang goods or services, walang customs duties. Related party transactions of a special nature, such as transfer of intangible assets or license, royalty payment, intragroup services, and interest expense. No? Ano yung mga tinatawag dito na special nature? The examples are intangible assets or the licensing of intangible assets. No? Performance of the taxpayer's net operating profit is lower than that of other companies in the same industry. So, syempre, pagka nakita mo na ganyan, lower siya in the same industry, there's something, no? Magkakaroon ka na kaagad ng idea on a possible transfer pricing issue. Letter 8, significance of related party transactions not included in the component of the taxpayer's net operating profits, such as interest, expense, gain or loss on sale of assets, and exchange rate gain or loss. No? Okay. So, ito yung mga sinasabi dito, ito yung mga dapat dinidisclose sa financial statements, no? Related party transactions. Okay. Another is non-routine types of related party transactions, such as business restructuring that involves or does not involve intangible assets and sales of intangible property, no? So ito yung mga transactions na non-routine, ibig sabihin mga one time lang na transactions, no? So ito yung red alert agad pag nakikita ito ng BIR. No? Especially kung mga transfer yan ng property. Taxpayer suffered losses over several years. Ito, may sinasabi nga ang BIR noon na yung 3 years na consecutive loss ka, hindi ka pa tumigil, tuloy-tuloy ka pa rin sa pagninegosyo, then fraudulent na yung negosyo mo. Why? Why? Kasi a sound economic reason for a certain business is that you do business because of profit. Eh, puro ka na net loss. Bakit ituloy mo pa? No? Tinatapon mo yung pera mo. Okay. So, ang ibig sabihin lang doon, hindi ka talaga totoong loss. No? Yun yung mga nangyayari sa mga famous na mga most controversial transfer pricing cases. No? Sinubject sa transfer pricing audit itong mga companies na loss, and makikita na hindi naman talaga loss, no? Sumusobra lang yung mga claims nila ng expenses. Okay. So when the risk of related party transaction are present, no, revenue officer shall include in the audit plan the appropriate method in determining arm's length price. If none, then the revenue officer shall perform the testing in the implementation of the audit. Upon discovery of the risk, the audit plan shall be revised accordingly. So, lahat yan, nakaplano. Number 7 is the set a schedule for reassessment meeting with the taxpayer based on the following. A, determine which transactions need further development. Which transaction may be closed or which transaction needs to be eliminated from further analysis. Determine the level and scope of transfer pricing involvement going forward. Okay. Discuss any new information and reassess adjust working hypothesis. Assess level and scope of counsel involvement and begin to consider any discrete legal issues. Continue to document, organize, and outline transactions determined to warrant further development and analysis based on information gathered to date. No? Kaya sabi ko sa inyo, ang mahaba ang proseso ng transfer pricing audit. Begin to formulate the best method analysis to include assessment of the taxpayer selected method. No? Kasi ang examiner po, required siya na gumawa ng sarili niyang transfer pricing analysis. Ang taxpayer din under transfer pricing audit are also required to make their own transfer pricing analysis. Determine additional accounting data and records needed for this assessment for application of any methods being considered as the best method. So ano po yung requirement natin doon sa RR2-2013 na guidelines, no? Sa paggawa po ng transfer pricing analysis na report. Apply all the methods and then recommend the best method rule. So yun po yung sinasabi doon sa Revenue Regulations 2-2013, which is the implementing guidelines po na ating transfer pricing law dito sa Pilipinas under Section 50 of the National Internal Revenue Code. Okay. Determine additional accounting data and records needed for this assessment for application of any methods being considered as the best method. So, sabi natin the best method rule. So na ngayon, implementation of the transfer pricing audit, no? Paano ba ini-implement yung transfer pricing audit, no? Okay. So it involves stages of issue development by determining the facts, applying the law to those facts, and understanding the various tax implication of the issue, no? So may issue na pinag-uusapan. The revenue officer and the taxpayer shall conduct interacting discussions and every effort should be made to resolve any factual differences. No? Communication and continuous reassessment should remain throughout the implementation process. No? Continuous reassessment. No? Okay. So, paano ini-implement po yung audit ng transfer pricing? Number 1, determination of the characteristics of the taxpayers. No? So, yun talaga ang pinakauna. Characteristic po ng taxpayers. Muna tayo. Walang question? Tahimik na. Kasi, ano na hindi na tax season ngayon. Ang susunod dyan, yung audit na. No? Yung mga, maglabasan na yung mga letters of authority. No? Okay. So, next na po tayo. By determining the characteristic of the taxpayer's business, understanding the functions of its related parties, then the revenue officers will gain an impression of the return expected by each of the parties in the transaction, as well as the risk of tax avoidance using transfer pricing transaction. So, nakita ko po during my audit, no, ang participation ng local company dito sa Pilipinas is just to do service to its parent company, no? Kaya wala talagang income na nangyayari dito. Bakit? Asan ang income na sa parent company. Accurate determination of the characteristic of the related transactions and the taxpayer's business will ease the selection of reliable comparables. Ang pinaka-heart din talaga ng transfer pricing study natin is the comparability analysis. Kasi ang sabi sa arm's length principle, compare, no? Compare the related party transactions and the independent transactions, no? Dapat daw ay comparable or similar. So, measures in the determination of the characteristic of the taxpayer's business, among other things. Letter A, identifying the characteristic of the related transactions of the taxpayers and conducting functional analysis. Okay. Identify the characteristic of the related transactions of the taxpayers. Ano ba to? Paano ba roon sila ng related party transactions, no? Okay, so revenue officer shall do an industry analysis by using external sources of information, including industry research report, publicly available annual financial statements of the main players in the taxpayers industry, data from the Securities and Exchange Commission, transfer pricing documentation, other information media available through the internet or in databases in order to gain general understanding of the conditions of the taxpayers industry. Yung ang hahaba ng mga proseso, no? Sa pag-identify nito mga related parties, transactions ng taxpayer. No? That's why sa mga international cases, it took them how many years, no? Kahit yung transfer pricing cases nasa court na, it took them 3 to 5 years na ma-dispose talaga yung case, no? Analysis of taxpayers industry shall be done with consideration to several factors, no? Including main characteristic of taxpayers business and performance of the industry. No? Kasi ang industry na yan, halimbawa, construction, no? Halimbawa, tourism, no? Yung mga resorts. Okay, so, papaano mo sila ngayon i-analyze, no? Ano yung characteristics ngayon ng mga resorts, di ba? Wala dahil sa COVID. Close sila lahat, no? So pagka ganun ang main business ng client mo, alam mo na. No? Alam mo na kung anong ilalagay mo sa report mo. No? Understanding the condition of the related transactions for comparability analysis for purposes of identifying the related transactions. No? Ano yung i-consider natin? Number 1, conditions that influence the industry. No? So you have to consider. Ano yung mga conditions that influence the industry? No? Industry and market segment where the taxpayer carries on business. No? Growth of industry, technology, size, and growth of markets. Competitive condition of the taxpayer and its competitors. So you have to consider also. Economic factors and existing regulations that influence the taxpayer business. No? Ano yung mga economic factors? Ano yung mga existing regulations? No? Sa economic factors po, pagka gumawa tayo ng study, sobrang hirap. Saan tayo kukuha ng mga economic factors? Economic conditions, saan tayo kumukuha niyan? Usually po, binibili yan sa mga commercial databases. At ang mahal. No? Kasi we have done one transfer pricing study, no? Then wala lang talaga kasi ano siya distributor ng truck. No? So walang source ng economic information dito sa Pilipinas. So ang ginawa namin bumili ng sa commercial databases, no? And it cost us 350,000. Yun lang, yung sinasabi lang na economic factors. No? 350,000 yan. Pag binili mo sa database. Kaya yung mga gumagawa ng mga transfer pricing study, gumagawa ng mga transfer pricing analysis report, talaga pong gather mo lahat yung information. No? Hindi pwede na kulang-kulang ka dyan ng information. Otherwise, yung study mo hindi reflective, hindi kompleto. No? Okay, so we have competitive condition of the taxpayers and its competitors. Competitors kasi are very rich source of, ano yung tinatawag natin? Sa comparables, no? So kung maghahanap ka ng mga companies na gawin mong comparables, i-compare mo para mapatunayan mo na tama yung transfer pricing mo. So, you have to tingnan natin kung ano yung mga klase ng mga competitors na yan na meron tayo. No? Kasi meron na tayong data sa mga competitors natin. Why? Kasi sila yung nakakasalamuhan natin along the way. No? So itong mga competitors na to, sila yung nasa market din na kasabay natin. No? So, hindi na tayo masyadong mahirapan na maghanap pa ng mga companies. Although ako kasi, ang ginagawa ko, since talagang services ko na to, bumibili po ako ng data ng mga player in the industries. Kasi hindi mo alam kung sino yung magpapagawa sa iyo. Halimbawa, ang magpapagawa sa iyo business process outsourcing. So meron na akong listing ng mga companies engaged in business process outsourcing. So doon ako kumukuha ng mga comparables ko na i-compare ko. Okay, so what are the economic factors, existing regulations that influence the taxpayers? Marami po yan. No? Lalo na kung gagawa ka ng study itong 2020, talagang ilagay mo dyan sa economic condition mo yung pagda-down ng economy because of the COVID. No? Although it is a public knowledge, but you are going to document still, no? Kung paano mo i-document as to the effect niyan sa industry mo. Conditions of the related parties. These are things also that you are going to consider. No, ano ba yung conditions ng related transactions? No? Type and value of related transactions. No? The period and frequency rate of the related transactions. The terms of the agreement, including the set of arrangement between the related parties. No? Kasi pag may related transactions, talagang nandyan yung maraming transfer pricing issues. Terms of contract, including term of delivery or discount. Sometimes ang transfer pricing issues nasa contract. No? Ano mo nga, kainit. Okay. So, sometimes nasa kontrata. No? That's why, pag gumagawa po tayo ng transfer pricing analysis, we have to see to it na lahat ng provisions na nakalagay po sa contracts are arm's length. No? Kasi halimbawa, mayroong isang provisions doon na parang in favor sa parent company, then it is not arm's length. No? Dapat ang subsidiary hindi niya inaccept yun. But if mapatunayan naman ng korte that the same person managed the parent company and the subsidiary, and then isa subject na kayo sa transfer pricing audit and transfer pricing adjustment. No? So in that case, parang may findings na yung audit. So parties involved in the related transactions and the relation between the parties. So ano yun? Parent, subsidiary, parent-subsidiary relationship, joint venture, franchise, cost contribution arrangement, and the chain of transactions in which the taxpayers' affiliated transactions become part of. Number 3 is the functional role of the taxpayer in the group. No? So ano yung functional na role niya? Ano yung functions ng taxpayer in the group? No? Structure of the taxpayers' organization in its group, including the decision-making process. Shareholding structure of the taxpayer in the group. And we have strategies, policies, as well as targets of the taxpayer. Function performed by its member of the group, the supply chain management, halimbawa, and the restructuring of taxpayers' business. No? So, very important to consider in transfer pricing audit. Okay, now let's go to financial ratio. Ano ba yung purpose ng mga financial ratio? No, so, in audit of transfer pricing, it is important to early examination and final performance of the taxpayer to identify the risk for tax avoidance by reason of the special relation. Ano yung tinatawag na special relation? Yan yung mga related party transactions ng parent and its subsidiaries. In applying the arm's length principle, although dito po sa mga sinasabi natin na financial transactions, the OECD or the Economic Cooperation and Development came up with a new, nung February 2020, they came up with a new guidelines on the transfer pricing of financial transactions, no? Financial transactions, yung 2020 na guidance. Gumawa mismo ang OECD. Okay. In applying the arm's length principle, financial ratio or degree of gross net profit of taxpayer will be compared, no? Iko-compare mo siya to that of the financial ratio, degree of gross net profits of comparable companies to determine the arm's length principle of taxpayers' business. Okay, so ito yung financial ratios na pwede mong gamitin, no? So gross margin to sale ratio. So gross profit over sale. We also have the gross profit to basic sale price ratio. So gross markup equals gross profit divided by basic sale price. Rate of return of sale ratio, net operating income over sale. Rate of return of total cost ratio, net operating income over itong its PB plus total operating cost. No? And then we have the rate of return of assets or ROA, net operating income over total operating assets. Kaya nga rate of return of assets siya no? Kasi magkano ba yung kinita mo? Magkano yung operating assets mo na ginagamit sa operation? No? So makikita mo yung rate of return on assets. Rate of outcome of capital employed, no? Okay. So ratio net operating income over current assets minus liabilities. And the bearer ratio. Ano po itong bearer ratio? Ito yung gross profit over operating expenses. Okay, so we have debts to capital ratio. Debts divided by capital. Research and development, cost to sale ratio. So, research and development cost over sale. So, yun po yung mga ratios. Marketing cost to sale ratio is marketing cost over sale. Okay. Ito yung masaya at pinakamarami po talaga din na findings dito, yung make functional analysis. No? Functional analysis is performed to obtain accurate identification on the characteristic of the taxpayers. No? Kaya nga functions, functional analysis. Excuse po, sadali. Actually, matagal na explanation po itong make functional analysis. Anyway, itong Ramong Wandas 2019, hindi po natin tumatapos ng isang upuan lang, no? Kasi dito kakayanin ng 2 oras. Ano tong functional analysis? No? Accurate identification of the characteristics of the taxpayer's business as well as their counterparts. No? So, by knowing them, the level of the risk borne and remuneration, ang profit which are proportional with the risk borne by any of the parties can be predicted. No? For example, the characteristic of business of the parties who perform manufacturing function among others are fully fledged manufacturing, no? Contract manufacturing and toll manufacturing. On the other hand, characteristic of the parties who perform distributor function among other things are fully fledged distributor, no? So limited risk distributor, commissioner, and commission agent. So for analysis is the mapping of economically relevant facts and characteristics of related party transactions. So ano yung mga functions sa assets and risk? Allocation of the functions, assets and risk between the parties involved in the affiliated transactions to accurately know the characteristic of each party. No? Kasi nga, i-analyze mo yung functions. Tingnan mo kung assets, no? Especially if the company is asset intensive. No? And then you have to determine the ownership of risk. No? Okay. So, ano pa yung mga sources of information na kailangan alam ng revenue officers, no? So, very important talaga yung organizational chart of the taxpayer. And then list of employees, job descriptions, and the authorities of the employees involved in the economically relevant transactions. Okay? And then we have the audited financial statements. No? So, actually, ito na yung mga documentation requirements eh. Segmented financial statements, no? Segmented borne by function and by independence of transactions. We also have the global pricing policy documentation. Licensing contracts for intangible assets to recognize the parties that own intangible assets. Kasi, sino ba yung magpapa-license niyan? Siyempre yung may-ari. No? Transfer pricing documentation. These are very important. Actually, ito yung maraming nagpapagawa talaga ngayon. The transfer pricing documentation. Okay. So, revenue officers daw should focus on following activities if you perform the FAR analysis. Number 1, identify the significant material, economically relevant functions performed by the taxpayer. Okay. Significant, no? Material, economically relevant functions. Okay. So, ano yung mga example doon? The design, processing, assembly, research and development, sale and distribution, purchase, provision of services, marketing, promotion, transportation, financing, management, and other related activities. No? Yun yung the revenue officer should focus. Identify the significant functions performed based on the following. Okay. So we have transfer pricing documentation and or FAR analysis form. Okay. So we also have the taxpayer's financial statement and then the organizational chart. No? Okay. So, conduct review and analysis of accounting data, interviews, plant tours, and site violations. Work with the taxpayers to identify key personnel for interview, site, or tours, and also to identify plan and site for the tour, no? Kasi ano yung tour? Ito yung mga on-site basis visits ng examiner sa kaniyang taxpayer, no? Okay. Work with the core members to prepare for interviews and tours, and also consider and evaluate for foreign travel. Okay. So, revenue officers need to prepare minutes of provisions of information. During interview, confirm the functions, contributions, participation performed by related parties regarding the related transactions. Okay. Ano to? Ito yung transactions with related parties that functions as intermediaries in product, sale, purchase transactions. No? Revenue officers need to do research on the organizational chart. Number and qualification of personnel. Financial statements of the related parties. No? To confirm that related parties have functions in the taxpayers related party transactions. Okay. Ito yung mga na-discuss na din naman natin to sa mga una no? Sige. Following should be considered identifying the use or existence of intangible assets. No? So, is there an existence of intangible assets? No? So, the company obtains a higher profitability level than the average for similar industries. No? The existence of the intangible assets is not determined by whether or not the intangible assets are recorded in the balance sheet. No? Sometimes ang problema sa intangibles, hindi mo makita, hindi nakalagay sa balance sheet. Okay. So before we go further sa ating example, no? CR lang ako ulit. No? Another 5 minutes break para nakakatayo.
Isa-isa.
Siyempre, ayaw nila yung transfer pricing. Sige. Go tayo sa...
Bago rin sa kanila kasi.
Okay, so example natin sa transfer pricing audit po ito No? Okay, so example 1. Cost daw in connection with research, development, and marketing of a product are often not capitalized but instead charged as expense at the time they occur, no? So this cost may not be reflected in the balance sheet as assets. No? Hindi siya asset sa balance sheet kasi expense nga eh. Yeah. Okay. Existence of intangible assets is not determined by whether or not they have legal protection. Ano ibig sabihin ng intangible assets na walang legal protection? Hindi siya registered sa IPO or sa Intellectual Property Office, no? Kasi yung intangibles, 'di ba? Yung example ng intangibles, they are copyrights, trademark, trade name, no? So dapat legally protected siya kung naka-register sa IPO or the Intellectual Property Office. Example 2, intangible assets relating to the production process in the form of patents are commonly registered, no? While those in the form of know-how are commonly not registered because the company owning the know-how take the view that this information should be kept confidential. Karamihan yung mga secret recipe, mga confidential information, hindi yan legally protected. Why? Because hindi siya pwedeng i-devolve, no? So, pag pinaregister mo, malalaman nila, hindi na siya secret, no? Hindi na siya intangible. It will lose its characteristic as being intangible kung malalaman na, wala na siyang value. So, yun yung mga sinasabi natin na know-how. Okay? So, types of intangibles and the steps to identify their existence. Letter A, manufacturing intangibles. Ano po ba yung mga examples ng manufacturing intangibles? We have the, ano yung example natin dito? License agreement, no? Service contracts, no? Ito yung created through the research and development, no? Developer of intangible assets may engage in the research and development. Ito yung suntok sa buwan, no? Pag nag-research and development ka, because you will never know kung magiging successful ba siya o hindi, no? So, there are activities by itself in the name of one or more members of the company group in these ways, no? So, based on service contract in its own name or that one or more members of the company group. Kaya nga ito yung cost-sharing arrangement, dapat nila na arm's length. Based on an agreement whereby the members involved in the joint activity will be the economic owners of the manufacturing intangibles. So, ano ba yung agreement? Sino yung magmamay-ari ng intangibles, no? Kasi, sabi na natin, group yung nag-create, group yung share ng mga expenses, no? So, sino yung mga maging may-ari ngayon? Kung ang maging may-ari dyan is the parent lang, hindi kasama yung grupo, then it's not arm's length. Why? Kasi dapat bawat participant doon sa grupo, may share sila doon sa benefits. Kung share lang sila sa expenses, tapos ang benefits sa parent company lang ang pupunta, hindi yun arm's length, no? Anong gagawin doon? I-adjust. Bibigyan ng benefits ang subsidiary o yung member of the group, no? So, ganyan po umiikot, ganyan nagtatrabaho, ganyan ginagamit ang transfer pricing. Okay, so ano nang susunod? Steps to identify the existence of manufacturing, no? Perform research on contracts, licensing contracts, sale contracts for intangible assets. Review the FAR analysis table relating to manufacturing functions and intangible assets used that has been filled in by the taxpayer. Check the taxpayer's organization chart regarding manufacturing functions, key personnel, and job description of the key personnel. No? Very important. Very important po talaga yung job description ng key personnel. Why? Kasi yun magiging determinant ng mga iba't ibang scheme pa. No? Conduct site visits and interviews with factory managers and manufacturing engineers to confirm whether or not there is know-how or parents used in the factory as well as its economic benefits. Identify existence of unique production equipment or modification made to the production equipment that boosts quality or reduces production cost. Alam niyo yung mga typical talaga na mga businessmen na kumikita, no? Talagang nag-i-invest po sila sa mga production equipment, no? Why? Kasi kung maganda yung production equipment mo, you can also create a good product. And when you have a good product, you can have a good price, no? Identify any changes in factory design that reduce production cost or increase in output. Factory design. Obtain a list of patents. Ito na. And conduct interviews with research and development personnel or key person related to patents to determine whether the patents are used or not. No? Also to determine the value of the patents, if any. Revenue officers may request the opinion of the expert regarding the value of the patents for the taxpayers. Ito pa, yung opinion of experts, no? Sa ibang bansa, during the trial, especially sa court, hindi yan nawawalan ng experts, no? The tax authority will hire an expert. The taxpayer will also hire an expert, no? Kung magbibigay ng opinion doon sa dispute.
May ma'am, si Sir Josepino Relian.
Yes, sir. Tama-tama sa mga question and answer po. Sige.
Tanong niya, ma'am, yung hindi po naka-register sa IPO yung trade name, okay lang po ba gamitin sa business?
Sa sarili mong business, ha? Pero kung sa business ng iba, naka-register sa kanila, halimbawa, hindi mo siya pwedeng gamitin. Pero kung sarili mo siya na intangibles, hindi naka-register sa IPO, okay lang. But, yun nga problema mo dyan, hindi ka protected. No? Yun yung sabi kanina natin na may legal protection ang intangibles. Pag hindi mo siya pinaregister sa IPO, wala siyang legal protection. No? Okay? So, ano yung recommendation natin? Dapat talaga nagpaparegister sa IPO. No? Lalo na ngayon, napaka-complicated na. Alam nyo, sa totoong buhay, sa ngayon, napaka-complicated na ng mundo. Kagaya lang sa paggamit ng business name. No? Sa dami na nang gumagamit ng business name. So, anong gagawin mo? Dapat protected yung business name mo. No? You have to spend extra money para ma-protectionan yung business name mo. No? Kasi very important yan. Pag hindi mo pina-IPO after 5 years, iba na naman yung business name mo. Okay. The revenue officers may request opinion of expert, no? Saan nakakuha ng expert? No? Sa expert sa industry. O, halimbawa, kung construction niya, mga engineer, contractors, they're experts on the industry. No? Regarding the value of the patents for the taxpayers. Conduct an interview with research and development personnel to determine the company level of success in the market produced by its such patent. No? So, kasi may record na yan eh. So, successful ba sila in the market? No, ginamit nila yung kanilang intangibles, no, with research and development. Okay. Marketing intangibles, Ano tong tinatawag na marketing intangibles? Ito yung trademarks, trade names. Bakit tinatawag sila na marketing intangibles? Kasi they add value to the product para madali siyang i-market. Yung mga trademark or trade names, ano pa? Nagbibigay sila ng pangalan doon sa product so that it can be easily identified by the consumer. No? May question?
May follow-up si Sir Sipino.
Eh.
Yung naka-register daw, ma'am, sa SEC, yung business name, ipa-register din daw po ba sa IPO?
Depende. Pero kung yung sinasabi mo na business name, yun na rin yung name ng corporation, then pwedeng hindi na. Kasi yung name ng corporation mo, once na registered ka na, hindi na yan binibigay ng corporation sa iba. No? Pero itong sinasabi ko, yung iba kasi, pinaparegister nila sa IPO, halimbawa, yung pangalan ng corporation mo is Realin Incorporated, no? So, yan, okay na yan, na pangalan lang yan. Pero pagka gumawa ka pa ng trade name mo, halimbawa, trade name mo is Realin General Merchandise, then dapat ipa-register mo yan sa DTI and then ipa-IPO mo, no? Kasi mayroon namang iba na pangalan lang ng corporation, yun ang ginagamit nila. But that is not the trade name. No? Iba pa yung trade name. At iba pa yung trademark. Ito yung gumawa ka na ng logo mo to identify your product. No? So yun dapat legally protected yan at pinaparegister sa IPO. No? Okay? Wala na? Siya yung pinakamasipag eh. Bilib ako kay Sarah.
Mary Grace, ma'am. Si Ma'am Mary Grace.
O yan, si Mama Mary Grace din. So, persipag din, no? Okay. Sige. So, marketing intangibles po tayo. Marketing intangibles can also be customers list, no? Ito yung pinag-aawayan sa Amazon, no? Amazon versus US, no? Na binalyo ng Amazon yung kanyang intangibles kasi nilipat niya sa Amazon Ireland, no, sa Europe. So, siningil siya ng US, IRS, ng transfer, no, based on the value ng intangibles. So, binalyo lang niya ng $216 million. No? Sabi ng US, hindi dapat. Mas malaki, no? Billion. So, doon sila nagkakatalo doon sa pangalan. Kasi pati customer list, nakabalyo sa IRS. Pero, nung dinala na sa korte, natalo yung IRS kasi hindi kasama yung ibang mga kagaya ng customers list, hindi siya kasama. No? Distribution channel can also be an intangible, no? Distribution channel mo, because you have the channel, mabilis lang mag-distribute ng products, nakakarating na kaagad sa customer, no? Ano pa yung marketing intangibles? Unique name, no? Bakit unique name? Hindi ka na gagaya, no? Symbol or picture that has important promotional value for the products, no? Ano yung mga symbol or picture that has important promotional value for the products? Ito yung makikita natin na yung mga old brands na may mga trademark sila na hanggang ngayon nandyan pa rin, no? Okay. So, the value of marketing intangibles depends on several factors. Ano yung several factors na yan? Reputation and credibility of the brand or trade name. No? At then, level of quality control and continuing research. Sa ibang bansa, yung research talaga nila is very, very important kind of expense po sa kanila. No? Para sa kanila, pag hindi ka nag-research, you will not survive. Why? Kasi hindi mo improve yung product mo. And once hindi mo ma-improve yung product mo, pagdating sa competition sa market, maiiwanan siya hanggang sa mamatay yung product mo. That's why for them, continuing research is very important part of being in business. No? distribution and availability of the goods and services that are marketed, success of the promotion cost, and so on. No? So, yun yung mga marketing intangibles. No? Okay. Ano yung steps to identify existence of marketing intangible? Conduct research on contracts relating to licenses. No? Kasi yung mga licenses na yan, may kasunod pa yan, no? Kasi pag sinabi mo na, ito si parent company, nila-license niya itong isang company to use its business name. No? So yung licenses na yan, may kasunod pa yan. Ano yan? Payment of royalties for the use of the license. No? So, pagka examiner ka, sunod-sunod na yan, makita mo na kaagad yan. No? May licensing ito. So, magkano ang royalty payment dito? Review the FAR analysis table regarding marketing functions and intangible assets used that has been filled in by the taxpayer. No? So, itong FAR analysis, may table yan, no? Ginagawa niya na matrix. Check the taxpayer's organizational chart with regard to marketing function, key personnel and their job descriptions. No? Yun yung mga informations na makita natin sa taxpayers organizations chart. No? Ito yung makikita mo yung mga functions and then yung mga relations sa bawat grupo. No? So, conduct interviews with marketing, sales, personnel to identify reasons for the product success in the market. No? So, bakit ba successful itong product na to in the market? Maybe 80%, 90% share siya sa market. No? So, bakit? Anong quality niya? No? So, identify existence of a series of activities that add value to the transaction. No? Sample 3. Strategic planning activities in the field of marketing. Advertising activities that have a long-term impact on a product and so on. No? So, ano tong strategic planning activities in the field of marketing? Advertising activities that have a long-term impact on a product and so on. So, ito yung mga advertising activities na hindi lang 1 year yung pakinabang, no? Sunod na. Identify the existence of successful distribution channels that make it easy for consumers to purchase the product and or services, no? If necessary. The revenue officers may request the opinions of experts regarding the reasons for the success of the taxpayer's product in the market. No? Ito yung mga sabi dito, successful distribution channel. So, ano yun? Meron na silang mga distributors na pwesto na kung saan-saan man yan na mga places. No? And easy for the consumers to purchase the products and or services. Kaya ngayon, ano yung ito? Ito yung mga presence ng mga online sellers, no? Na kahit saan, nandyan sila. So, mabilis lang yung distribution ng products. Map and or confirm the risk borne by the taxpayer in connection with the affiliated transactions, no? So, halimbawa, yung affiliated transactions, the parent is the manufacturing company, no? Tapos yung subsidiary niya, distributor, no? So, ano yung risk borne by the distributor na subsidiary lang ng parent, no? So, posible na sinabi ng parent, kung may mga defective na goods, hindi ka lang distributor, kung hindi, ikaw pa yung magbabayad dyan sa mga warranties, no? So, posible na ganun ang sasabihin ng parent. Studying sale, purchase contracts, identifying right of transactions, including those for uncollectible receivables, no? So, operating expenses in the form of loss from exchange rate differences, no? We have warranty expense and inventory obsolescence. So, ito talaga ang marami itong inventory obsolescence, especially if perishable yung goods mo, no? Revenue officers need to observe consistency between the party that bears the risk as stated in the contract and the facts and conditions in the field, no? So, in performing FAR analysis, anong FAR analysis? Functions, assets, and risk, no? The revenue officers need to identify the taxpayer's contribution to the creation, development, protection, or maintenance of the intangible assets, no? Factors that need to be considered in identifying the taxpayer's contribution include the following: existence of research and development cost or marketing cost, no? Existence of function relating to research and development performed by the taxpayer. And then we have existence of a function of marketing performed by the taxpayer. Existence of risk of research and development and or marketing risk borne by the taxpayer. So ito na yung sinasabi ko sa inyo na yung distributor na nagma-market, sa kanya pa yung warranty, no? Ng mga defective goods. When in fact, dapat sa parent yan, no? Okay, so we also have existence of personnel with special qualification or employed in the functions of market, no? Manufacturing, research, development, other functions. And also the existence of contribution channel and customers list. These are considered intangibles, no? Contribution channel and the customers list. Ang problema lang, dun sa case ng Amazon, na pinabayad ng IRS yung Amazon, sinama yung mga customers list, pagdating sa korte, hindi na pinayagan ng korte na kasama, no? Kasi, doon pa yun sa unang batas ng US, 2002 pa. Pero noong 2010, gumawa na sila ng ibang regulations na sa intangibles, kasama na pati customers list, no? Okay. Ito yung sa term ng korte, other residual value ng intangibles, no? Nakasama yung customers list, mga contribution channel, no? Kasi ang intangibles, iba-ibang mukha yan, ha? Hindi yan iisa lang, no? So there are so many ways na magiging intangible yung isang bagay, no? Contributions made by the taxpayer in connection with the success of the product, no? Should receive remuneration over and above the routine functions that are performed. So, the reasonable range of the taxpayer's financial performance should be higher than the average for similar companies that do not have a contribution to intangible. Siyempre, pag may contribution ka to intangible, dapat part owner ka ng intangible, no? O kaya papagamit sa iyo ng free kasi kasama ka na nag-produce. Okay. So, after performing the FAR analysis, the revenue officer should be able to draw conclusion about the characteristic of the taxpayer business and the functions performed by the related parties, no? To examine the appropriateness of remuneration received by the taxpayer and its related parties to the functions performed as its used and risk borne by its party. No? Kaya yung sabi ko na sa inyo na madugo talaga ang transfer pricing audit, no? Sobra. Kasi kahit na ito makarating sa korte, 5 years, 3 years bago madesisyonan. Okay, so conclusion about the characteristics of the taxpayer's business may be in the form of toll manufacturing, no? Contract manufacturing, fully fledged manufacturing, fully fledged distributor, no? Limited risk distributor, commissionaire, no? Commission agent, service provider, or other. Okay. So in cases where there are some changes or development in the business activities that may recharacterize the taxpayer's business, the revenue officer shall determine the adjustment based on the functions performed as its used and risk borne. No? Okay, so na changes sa development ng business activities. Selection of transfer pricing method. Ano itong mga selection ng transfer pricing method? Ito yung 5 methods po na gamit sa atin ng OECD or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Ito po yung 5 transfer pricing method, no? Yung comparable and controlled price method, the resale price method, cost plus method, transactional net margin method, and also the profit split method, no? So yun yung mga transfer pricing method, no? And the next is to identify available comparables, no? So paano po natin i-identify yung available comparables? One of the important things in choosing transfer pricing method is the availability of reliable independent comparables. No? So, the purpose of this is to ensure availability and reliability of independent comparables to be applied. Comparables to be identified can be in the form of prices. Ito na, napakalawak ng intangible. Ano pala siya? Form of prices data. For example, market price for commodities. No? Data on margin of gross profit or data on margin of net profit. Comparables used to test transaction of the taxpayer with their related parties can be grouped into internal comparables and external comparables. No? So, what are internal comparables? Pag sinabi mo na internal, within the group, no? Internal comparables are obtained when the tested party engages in sale transactions or purchase of goods or services with unrelated parties. No? Licensing of intangible property to unrelated parties. No? Imposition of interest rates, interest payments on loans to unrelated parties. Factors that need to be confirmed in identifying reliable internal comparables. No? So, ano to? Ensure that the internal comparables are not transactions that were performed solely to justify that the related party transactions are arm's length. No? Anong example? TMD Corporation, a manufacturer of agricultural machinery, sells part of its products through LAC Inc., its subsidiary in country X. In addition, TMD Corporation also sells a small amount of its product 3WG to FAL Limited, an independent distributor in country Y. No? Economic conditions in country X, country Y are relatively similar. No? So, similar. So, sino yung internal comparables natin at sino yung external comparable? To use sale transaction to FAL Limited as internal comparable, no? Kasi related party, it must first be confirmed that these independent transactions are not performed solely to justify the affiliated transactions are at arm's length. Ito nang ginagawa, no? Kasi sabi natin kung matalino ang tax authorities, matalino din yung taxpayers. Since alam na natin na magkakaroon ng comparability, no, yung arm's length transaction at saka yung internal at saka related parties at saka independent parties, so magkaroon sila ng comparison. Anong ginagawa ng iba? Gumagawa na din sila ng transactions na independent party kunwari nila, pero parang designated lang din na independent party para meron silang comparable, no? So just to satisfy Yun yung sinasabi natin na nagiging comparable siya, pero gawa pa rin yun ng related parties just to satisfy na magkaroon lang sila din ng comparables, no? Perform solely means that FAL Limited is not economically dependent from its transaction with TMD Corporation. Kaya nga siya independent, no? Hindi siya dependent. Kaya ang tawag sa kanya independent. Otherwise, hindi siya magiging qualified na comparable, no? Okay. So, ensure that internal comparables are independent transactions performed in the normal course of business, no? Yun yung sinasabi ko na hindi natin to matatapos, no? Kasi ang haba po ng Ramo 1-2019. Anyway, tapusin lang po natin itong topic about comparables, no? Then we will continue our discussion on the next meeting sa Tuesday naman po ulit, no? Example 5. At the start of the year, TMD Corporation, a manufacturer of agricultural machinery, sales product 3WD2 LEC Inc., its subsidiary in Country X. At the end of the year, TMD Corporation goes bankrupt. No, bankrupt siya. Has to liquidate its inventory by selling all its product 3WD at liquidation price. Pag liquidation price, siyempre mas mababa, no? Because this liquidation sale is not conducted under normal business condition, the sale of TMD Corporation at the time of the liquidation cannot be used as independent comparable, no? So, at least sinasabi na po dito, hindi siya pwede na independent comparable in determining the fair price of TMD Corporation product to LEC Inc. Kasi yun ang hirap. Pag gawa na ng transfer pricing analysis, wala kang mahanap na comparables, no? Kasi the heart of transfer pricing study is comparability. Eh, wala kang company na ma-compare. Oh, so, hindi mo magawa ngayon yung comparability, no? So, anong gagawin? Ensure comparability between related party transactions and the internal comparable by considering the 5 comparability factors, no? I discussed that already sa inyo, no? Under the RR 2-2013 at ito din po yung sa OECD, no? Yung Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the latest guideline is 2017 OECD Transfer Pricing Guidelines. Nandyan din po itong 5 comparability factors. Ano to? Characteristics or nature of goods and services, whether tangible or intangible. And we have the FAR analysis, the functions, assets, and risks. And we have the contractual terms, no? Economic circumstances and the business strategies, no? Okay. External comparable, no? Tapusin lang po natin yung comparables. The external comparables that can be used to test the arm's length nature of related party transactions may be in the form of the following but not limited to. Ito yun. Market price of commodity products or price of similar goods or services traded by unrelated parties such as gold, silver, crude, palm oil, coal, and other commodity products. Actually, dun sa mga transfer pricing cases po na pinag-aralan na namin on the 5-day certificate program po natin sa transfer pricing, meron tayong mga transfer pricing issues po na encounter doon that involves a very, very unique kind of commodity. But still, mayroon pa rin transfer pricing issues. In that case, ano sabi ng OECD? Can there be comparables if the item is very unique na wala ka namang makita talaga na comparable, no? So, ano mga naging issues doon? Actually, ang issues doon yung terms nila, terms and conditions, no? Sa terms and conditions, magkakaroon ka ng comparables. Not the item anymore, but the contractual terms, no? So, market price of commodity products or price of similar goods or services traded by unrelated parties such as gold, silver, crude, palm oil, coal, and other commodity products, no? So, ano naman itong letter B na Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas offered rate, BSP? Ito yung mga interest rates, no? Philippine Securities and Exchange Commission database, no? Pwede ka rin kumuha. May database ang SEC. And you can buy also data from the commercial databases, no? Napakamahal nga lang, no? That's why kung may magpapagawa ng transfer pricing analysis, you have to consider also yung availability of the information. Kasi kung wala, i-add up mo na doon sa amount or sa cost ng pagpagawa nila ng transfer pricing analysis, no? Okay, so ito yung mga transfer pricing methods. Sa susunod na po natin to na study, and hopefully may natutunan po tayo in our online streaming. May question?
May question, ma'am eh.
Sige.
Si Sir James Hoyla, ma'am.
Okay, so shout out po, Sir James.
Ang tanong niya, ma'am, sa case po ng PNG Commissioner ruling,
Okay.
disregarded na po ba ang transfer pricing issue since deemed permanent establishment na po iyon at need na i-declare as revenue ng PNG Philippines yung income?
Ang sagot po natin dyan, kahit na yung OECD, hindi sila magbibigay ng opinion, alam nyo, because ang transfer pricing study is in-depth po talaga yan na study. So, hindi po tayo pwede magbigay ng opinion, especially na hindi natin nakita talaga, no? Kasi bago ka po makapagbigay ng opinion sa transfer pricing study, sobrang dami po ng gagawin mo, no? Kaya yung based on the very limited facts na sinasabi mo, hindi po tayo makapag-form ng opinion sa ganun na case. Kasi ang sabi ng OECD, each transfer pricing issue is very unique. You have to consider the facts and circumstances, yung factual na nangyayari bago ka makapag-form po ng opinion, no? So, it might be na sabihin kong pwede, sabihin kong na hindi. But may twist lang doon na maliit, na doon pala sa mga transactions nila or sa mga ginagawa nila, pwedeng mag-iiba na po yung opinion, no? Yun yung masasabi ko sa inyo na yung para sa akin kasi very challenging po yung transfer pricing, no? Very challenging. So hindi po tayo makapagbigay ng opinion. Kahit na yung ang daming nanghihingi sa akin ng opinion, ano po yung opinion ninyo sa ABCBN na mga transfer pricing issues? Sabi ko, hindi ako pwedeng magbigay kasi wala akong pinanghawakan na data. No? Pag dinala mo pa nga sa korte yung isang transfer pricing issues, 3 years to 5 years nila ma-decisionan. How can I just give, no, just as part of a moment, kabigay ka ng information? It can be na wala kang basis. No? Wala kang basis.
Tapos ma'am, pahabol ni Sir Josefino, ano daw po possible work position sa mga big companies yung may knowledge sa transfer pricing?
Possible na?
Position ma'am sa big companies, kung ba magiging trabaho?
Kung knowledgeable ka sa transfer pricing, then ang karamihan po talaga, linalagay sila sa documentation. Ano yung mga documentation? Kasi sa OECD transfer pricing guidelines natin, 3 yung documentation na nire-require. Ano yun? Yung master file, country by country reporting, at saka yung local files. So usually, pag knowledgeable ka sa transfer pricing, doon ka ninalagay sa documentation. Sa accounting, no?
Tapos ma'am, si Ma'am RG ma'am, good evening daw po. Pahumabol siya ma'am.
Okay, Miss RG, good evening. No? Very masipag din tong si Miss RG natin. Okay.
Yun lang ma'am. Yun lang.
Okay, so with this, I would like to say thank you. And sana may natutunan tayo. And our YouTube channel is willing pa din po kami na magbibigay sa inyo ng ang tax update, yung mga latest natin sa taxation. Our purpose here is for you to have a better tax compliance. Thank you and good evening.